So I've been noticing that a lot of newer game releases have now been implementing a parry system, for which I personally don't mind, as I've been parrying in games since 2009. But I know other players wouldn't have the same reaction as me, in which I then decided to ask the boys an honest question related to this, which was, when given the option to either dodge or parry an attack, which do you normally prefer, and why? This gave me the following responses. Hard one. But I'd say dodge because timing skill. Dodging I can anticipate and move. Dodge. At least I don't risk getting damaged. And dodge. With time I can master parry. For that answer, I asked if he could give a little more detail, in which he responded with, dodge is a reflex that happens naturally. To parry, you need to train to get that response. I could see why they gave me the same response, especially one that dodging is a reflex we all naturally have. But this made me think of something. How was it that I started to parry more often? I know that back then, I would be the one dodging all attacks to avoid taking damage. And so, I want to share the steps I took to learn how to parry and what to look out for, as there are different variations of a parry in current games. I'll focus mostly on more modern games to get the point across, but I may jump between older titles as well, as they do share some similarities. For these steps, I highly recommend a setting that's either a training mode or a low-level enemy area. But as you progress and get better at parrying, keep progressing to tougher areas or difficulties to really master it. The first step I took was undoubtedly the hardest one, which was to learn to take an incoming attack with either a block or guard feature, or just take the hit altogether and not try to dodge before and after the hit connects. This was the hardest step to learn at first, as how my buddy said, dodging is a natural reflex. You may be wondering, why do I have to take the hit? And my answer to this is to build the initial confidence you'll need to perform a parry later on, and to start training your reflexes to not resort to only dodging an attack. The second step is to see how long an enemy's attack takes for it to make contact with you. This will determine how fast your reaction will have to be when attempting to parry and what part of the attack makes contact with you. This will change depending on the type of enemy you are currently facing and either if the enemy has a weapon or not, as this will be a key factor for how difficult a parry will be against certain types of enemies or bosses. A little bit of extra details to consider for this one is that the type of attacks that you will encounter are the following. I placed these by categories as they share a lot of similarities. Bare hands and daggers/knives. These are normally pretty instant, as some can sometimes be unreactable in time. Parrying these types of attacks are usually the hardest due to how close they have to be to your character. Regular sized swords, axes, and hammers. These are seen in most action games, and normally the easiest to parry, as you can see how the weapon gets closer to you with a swing. The timing for these stays consistent for the most part, but there can be exceptions depending on the enemy using them. spears, overhead, and lunge attacks. These are placed in their own category, as they have a long reach, and depending on where you are currently standing, makes the difference on how difficult they can be in parry. Focusing on the blade or tip of the attack and arm motion of the enemy will help you in learning when to parry. Great swords and oversized weapons. For the most part, the slowest attacks that you'll encounter, but by far, some of the riskiest weapons to parry, as their windups will vary and can sometimes throw off your parry timing. There are some occasions in which these types of weapons are used in rapid succession. Projectiles. These include throwable objects and sometimes bullets. These are normally extremely quick and can be difficult to time the parry due to the distance between you and the object coming at you. The third step is to see how long your parry takes for it to be active. Does it become active as soon as you press the parry or block button like in Lies of P or Sekiro? Does it have some delay like in the Dark Souls series? Or does it need to travel a distance like Bloodborne's bullets? These are all components in learning the parry in your selected game. From what I've seen in multiple 3D action games, they normally opt for an instant button press parry, but the other variations are also used. For 2D action games, it's normally an instant button press parry as well. I haven't encountered one that has a delayed parry. The fourth step is to see if there are either any visual or sound cues that an enemy does before an attack. One of the biggest mistakes you can do while attempting to parry is to not study your enemy's attack pattern and learning more about their timing. This step will make more sense as you parry more often. The fifth step can either be the longest or shortest step, depending on how much you've parried before, is to start timing your parry with the enemy's attack. Now that you've seen the type of attack you're dealing with and what part connects with you, it's time for you to start practicing your parry animation, connecting with the enemy attack. For instant button press parries, you will need to be able to time your parry with the enemy's attack as it's about to connect with your character. Some games' parry timing can be more strict than others, and managing to react at the last possible moment for any attack will vary on each enemy. For delayed parries, most of these have about a second or half a second delay before the parry animation is active. These parries are more committed than the instant button, as when pressing the designated parry button, you will be locked into your parry animation until it ends. To connect these with the enemy's attack, you will need to anticipate the attack beforehand and time your parry a little before the attack makes complete contact with your character. Bloodborne's gun is a special type of parry, although pretty similar to the delayed parry in a sense that you're locked in the animation until it finishes. Since this can be used at long range, you will mostly be able to shoot from a safer distance. But what makes this parry special is that the bullet being shot needs to travel its distance before connecting with the enemy as it's about to attack. This can range from extremely close distances to very far, depending on your current position. The sixth step is to become accustomed to only pressing the parry button when needed. What I mean by this is to not spam the parry button in all encounters, as in many occasions, this could actually lower your parry frames a lot. If you're unsure about an attack's timing, block it. This will give you an idea of what timing the attack has. Once you see the same attack being used against you, try parrying once again. Repetition is essential when learning how to parry efficiently. The seventh step is positioning. Sometimes moving either closer or farther away from an enemy will help in landing a parry much easier. There are also other occasions in which you aren't able to land a parry due to completely missing the part of the attack that should make contact with you. Always be aware that an enemy's attack hitbox and timing can change depending on where you are currently standing. Easy parries can become difficult and vice versa with poor positioning. You may be wondering as you progress with parrying, how do I learn to parry more difficult attacks? In short, the same steps as when you began parrying will need to be taken again, but with some minor tweaks and 2 extra steps. You can attempt to do this at any time you think you're prepared to up your parry game. The only things that you need to always remember when going for harder parries is to remain focused and relaxed. You will be able to reach a higher level of parrying as you keep practicing and experimenting against different attacks. For the first 2 steps, since you'll always be encountering different types of attacks when attempting to parry, you'll be getting more accustomed to taking hits and seeing both what and when you're going to receive the hit from an enemy. Always see what type and how a weapon is used against you. Let's use the attacks from the extra step to go into more details. Bare hands and daggers/knives. As mentioned before, these are the hardest to parry, but some enemies will sneak the attack while in the middle of an extended string, while some will use them in either rapid succession or delayed. Looking at muscle movements from the enemy will greatly assist you in parrying these more often, or getting hit by them more than enough times to know that they're coming at you. Regular sized swords, axes, and hammers. Still the most basic attack you'll see, but can sometimes have their attack variation change. Instead of swings, they could be mixed in with some overhead and lunge attacks. In terms of parrying risk, swords are the easiest since slash attacks don't break too much posture. Axes are the middle ground, since strong swings can be thrown in the mix. And hammers being the riskiest of them all, since they are made to break posture and drain your energy quickly when mistimed. Spears, overhead, and lunge attacks. Proper distance is needed to parry these attacks effectively, as being too close to the attack will make it extremely difficult to parry, making you have to react way quicker than at a longer distance. Still possible to do, but way harder to do, as your visibility will be limited. If an enemy is doing an overhead attack from the air, focusing on when the camera shifts focus as opposed to the part of the weapon that makes contact with you can help in timing these correctly, as when the camera shifts focus, it means the attack's about to connect with you. For grounded overhead attacks, focus on when the attack starts making a downwards movement. Timing on those attacks can vary for each enemy. greatswords, and oversized weapons. These attacks' windups will make the effort to mess up your parry timing. Whether it be by having the attack take forever to make contact with you, or having them being dragged around the floor to throw your timing off. Sound cues like the enemy grunting before the attack becomes active will prepare you for the incoming attack. Projectiles. Managing your distance will help you a lot in knowing when the projectile is about to make contact with you. For thrown projectiles, look at the arm movements your enemy makes before throwing the attack at you, and how fast it goes after it's thrown. Shot projectiles, like guns, are extremely quick in making contact with you. Having a good distance will make the difference in how fast your reaction needs to be. Sound cues are a big giveaway for when you need to parry, especially if it's a gunshot. For the third step, as you're getting used to your parry timing, being consistent with it will become more natural as you keep practicing it. For the 4th through 7th step, all of these are combined into one section, due to all of them taking place at the same time, and being the most important steps to learn before proceeding to the last 2 steps. The 8th step is learning enemy gaps in their attack pattern. What I'm referring to here will vary depending on what type of parry you're trying to master in your current game. For instant button parries, learning when to press the parry button in conjunction to the enemy's attack pattern, there are times that a flurry of attacks will be coming your way, some at the same speed as the initial attack, and some being either slower or faster. Dealing with delayed attacks in between a flurry of fast-hitting attacks can throw you off guard at times. Staying calm and focused will greatly help in seeing these patterns more frequently. For delayed parries, there are times in which you won't be able to parry the first attack that comes your way. Seeing a gap that's big enough for your parry to activate can give you the upper hand when dealing with an attack that isn't just one swing. Recognizing attack patterns and reacting accordingly will help you in turning the tables. For Bloodborne's gunshot, same as with the delayed parries, but being able to do a parry from a safer distance. Due to Bloodborne's game style being extremely aggressive, many attacks may come out quicker than you might expect, and can sometimes close the distance you have between the enemy and yourself. There are some occasions in which a flurry of attacks can be stopped with a parry at any time of the enemy's animation, but it's not always the case. The final step is practicing at your own pace. Parrying isn't an easy action to do. Some may pick up on this quicker than others, but taken from my own experience, I wasn't able to parry at the level I currently am in one day. It took time for me to get where I am today, and believe me, I still manage to mess up my parry timings every once in a while. Any players that parry a lot probably went through the same process I did at some point, so don't give up, you'll be able to get the hang of it soon. Before I conclude this video, I'd like to share some final tips that you may find useful when first learning about each parry time. For the instant button parries, you will need to parry multiple attacks at a changing pace, some harder than others, as one parry isn't enough to stagger an enemy for big damage, or in some cases, finish them off. Knowing how to parry consecutively at different speeds and keeping your composure upon receiving a hit are key components to master this parry. Some delayed parries, like the Aegis Shield in Lies of P, have a visual indicator of what your parry frames are. But most delayed parries share the same timing. These parries normally just need to connect once to cause a stagger, but there are some special occasions in which multiple parries are needed to stagger an enemy. This, in my opinion, can be the hardest parry to master due to the anticipation and commitment factor. In the case of Bloodborne's parry, you will sometimes need to reposition yourself, as being too close or too far from an enemy can sometimes cause the bullet to miss. Another tip is that if you don't know if an enemy is parryable, do a charge attack on their back. If they stagger after receiving the hit, they can be parried. If not, you can't parry the enemy. I hope this information helps you out and wanted to try parrying more often than before. Keep on practicing and experimenting with different attacks, as you never know what can be parried until you try it. And while you're down in the comments, share with me the first game you started parrying on. I'd like to know what games other players focused on to learn how to parry. Mine was Devil May Cry 4. Hope to see you all around in the next video.
And that's the game.